Hello, hello. We are live from the Denver airport. We've got two amazing guests, and of course, we're in the green room for DisrupTV. As you know, we're amazing host El. Vala, he's stuck in the London air traffic scenario, so he's not going to be with us. But we've got Crawford and Gurvinder. Let's introduce our guests in reverse order, as we always do. Gurvinder, welcome to the show. Where are you coming in from today?
Hey, Ray, great to be here. Thrilled to be on DisrupTV again for an engaging conversation at the intersection of AI, enterprise transformation, and leadership. We'll talk about persistent and what we are doing. It's all about growth, coming from New Jersey today. Thanks for having me.
Very, very cool. All right, well, thanks for being here. Crawford, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about?
Well, Ray, it is my pleasure to be here. Gurvinder, great to see you again, as well as El. I am coming in from just outside of Boston, where you and I had a coffee, Ray, at Needham, Mass. And I am happy that I'm not in London today. That's about all I can say. Wow, I feel bad. Feel bad for the folks there. What a mess.
What a mess. And we're live from the worldwide headquarters of IDC. An amazing place, an amazing institution, and of course, one of our friends in the analyst business. Okay, with that, let's turn it back to you, El. We'll do it for the count, and let's start the show.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, and you're live on DisrupTV. More importantly, you're live here with Crawford Del Prete. And of course, this is our episode talking about a whole bunch of things, from latest IT study, IT surveys, and of course, our latest conversations with industry experts like Gurvinder. So let's start with our bio with Crawford. Crawford is one of the leaders. He's the president of IDC, and more importantly, this is, and I say this even as we're colleagues in the industry, the premier global provider of market intelligence advisor services and events for information technology, telecom, and consumer tech markets. And Crawford has been in this industry since day one. I actually think you started with the industry when you're like 4. So
you got it.
You know, Crawford is the guy that's been spending time trying to understand what it means, how it makes sense, not just for industry leaders on the vendor side, but for buyers of technology. If you think about financial markets and you think about what's happening in terms of, key decision makers and policy makers, he's the one to talk about. But not only is he driving digital transformation at IDC, he's also been in the middle of defining it. He manages 2,300 plus people, 1,200 analysts, and of course, he's been focused on figuring out where IDC's future growth is. And you can follow him on Twitter, or X as we call it, at Craw. So thanks for being on the show today.
Great to see you, Ray, and great to see Denver. Denver looks lovely, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Hey, we're really excited to have you. And you publish some seminal reports every year. And one of them is really about where budgets, where technology spending is headed. Give us the landscape for what's happening in IT spending for 2025.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So when we look at the IT spending market, I think it probably makes sense to look at 2024 and then into 2025 growth, because Ray, you and I have been in this business for a long time. And when we roll up what we saw in 2024, it's pretty crazy. We saw 11% growth for total IT in 2024. And this year, our expectation is that we'll see somewhere between 8 and 3 for a downside perspective, percent growth. Now, that's a very, very wide band. And our expectation is we'll be probably in the middle of that band. Why is that band so wide for overall IT spending? And obviously, it has to do with the whiplash that we're seeing out of the new administration, the threat of tariffs, changes in the geopolitical landscape. But before we get to that, to answer your question, I think what's really interesting to click into is to think about where was the spending in last year and where will it be this year. And so, Ray, it looks like you're sitting down. I'm glad you're sitting down. We saw on the heels of this infrastructure build out, we saw over 55% revenue growth in the server and storage business last year. And that is bananas. That is off the chart in terms of what we saw. And if you just scan the headlines, what was driving that, which of course is the investment in hyperscalers around GPUs and around AI. But even if you take the hyperscaler growth out, you still are left with about 20% growth for enterprise servers and enterprise storage last year combined.
That's still a huge number.
Still a huge number. And so why are we seeing that? We're seeing that in a couple of different areas. We're seeing that because there's significant growth for an upgrade cycle happening on the server side, as well as we're now starting to see enterprises investing in their own right in AI systems. We also obviously saw significant growth last year in infrastructure as a service, about 20% growth, and in software as a service, which is about 14% growth. And we like to joke, Ray, I know you said that was the first thing. The SaaS business is very much the Roach Motel, where you kind of go in, you check in, but you can't check out because it becomes very, very sticky in your environment. Also, we'll see other smaller categories actually return to growth as we get into 2025. So kind of the nuclear winter associated with networking, where we saw networking down about 6% last year, that'll actually grow about 8%. So that's a 14% swing in terms of dollar spend. Now, speaking of the growth in 25, we will see server and storage growth clock in again at about 18% growth this year. We'll see infrastructure as a service grow another 20%, and we'll see software grow a similar amount, about 13%. And as I said, we'll see networking grow at about 8%. The other sort of wild card here is we will see commercial PCs return to growth this year. And the reason for that is because of the Windows upgrade cycle and the move to Windows 11 with the end of life associated with Windows 10. But
that's a great point.
And I'm happy to dialogue about it, but that's kind of the overall landscape.
Actually, you also had just released, I think today, a security spending thing, 12.2% increase in 2025. Let's talk a little about cyber threats too. That's a really hot topic.
Yeah. So cyber is continuing to grow in this low double-digit growth range. And what we're seeing, I think maybe the most interesting thing about cyber is the intersection. Well, two things are happening in cyber that I find super, super interesting. Earlier this week, we saw one of them where you saw, Google make the acquisition of Wiz. And when you saw that, what you were really seeing was a company buying into more of an end-to-end cloud platform that can connect clouds and secure multi-cloud environments. And as I like to joke, the problem with security is that the point security products, sometimes they're best of breed, but they force the customer to be the systems integrator. And when the customer is the systems integrator, the customer typically screws it up or doesn't manage it effectively, and that opens up the threat landscape. And so what you're seeing first is you're seeing more and more of an end-to-end holistic approach, and in the case of Wiz, to sort of have security operate across multiple clouds. The other thing we really haven't seen yet, but we will see, is the move to AI in security. And we'll see security become more and more intelligent and predictive. I mean, we've seen it for a number of years, but we'll see it, I think, at scale with the emergence of agents, where you can really start to more effectively monitor and act on your security threat landscape in a much more automated way than ever before. But make no mistake, at the top of every one of our surveys, in terms of what keeps you up at night, where are the spending areas where your budgets are not going to be cut, your budget spending is immune. Security is always in those top 4.
Using AI to fight AI, which is fighting us with AI on cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this hilarious loop that's going on. I don't know if we're ever going to keep up, but at least it's now machine versus machine versus human.
Two guys that it keeps in business.
Hey, I definitely keep staying on that front. That's going to be a hot area for quite some time. But hey, what about this? And I'm going to take you into some of the areas you love talking about, which is the implications of tech policy and policy on tech and tech companies. What are tariffs doing? Is it having a negative effect? Is it having a confusing effect? What does it mean from the short, mid, and long term?
Yeah, well, so the short answer is it depends, right? And what we're seeing with the impact of tariffs, first and foremost, we're seeing the threat associated with tariff is getting companies to pause. And we're seeing companies definitely wait and take a pause. And what we're also seeing is that when you look at the tariffs that have actually been enacted, our expectation is that if companies can't mitigate those tariffs, they will have to, there's just not enough margin. They'll have to pass those tariff costs on to the end user. So where are the areas where we're going to see the most acute impact of that is we're going to see those in phones. We're going to see it in other sort of low-end consumer devices, which are obviously all largely, not all, but largely manufactured in China. Interestingly, as you start going up the value chain, as you start getting into PCs, you start getting into servers, the suppliers have been very proactive over the last couple of years of mitigating where that manufacturer is. And that manufacture now happens at the contract manufacturers largely. And those are in places like Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand. And so we're seeing a very low percent of the products that are ultimately going to be landed in the US coming from China. They're now coming from some of those other manufacturers.
Hey, Crawford, let me dive deeper. So you're saying that since the last Trump administration, we've gotten better with our global supply chain resiliency? Like we've actually learned from that? And now that we're in tariffs again, are we ready? Is the world ready?
When you look at, for phones, the world is not ready. Phones are still very, very dependent on China, a lot of manufacturing there. But when you get to PCs, yeah, we've done a very, very good job. And by the way, the readiness actually doesn't go back just to the first Trump administration. It actually, I don't know if you've been around this industry a long time. I don't know if you remember the fires in Thailand.
Yes.
It was actually then that we started seeing the mitigation efforts because a lot of the disk drive factories actually got affected. Western Digital, Seagate, those guys got affected. And so we've seen a lot of mitigation moving around. And we have done a good job of protecting against single points of failure. The other thing that's definitely happening is the repatriation of manufacturing to the US. And so you've got companies like HPE manufacturing in Chippewa Falls from when they bought Cray. You've got other server manufacturers starting to do manufacture in the US, as well as in other areas where in the past they hadn't done final assembly before. Now, again, some of those areas are going to be affected, like places like Guadalajara. But again, the bottom line is that in a lot of cases, final assembly, and this is a very interesting point, in the eyes of the US, a lot of times final assembly means where are the most expensive components put in, right? And so that is oftentimes happening in places like I said, outside of China, or in some cases even in the US.
So these new factories that are coming into the US, right? They're very different, right? I mean, it's not like we're adding a ton more people, but we're bringing the capability internally, and they're highly automated, right? These are really smart factories that are coming back, right?
They're very well. I mean, as you know, if it's a semiconductor fab, super smart, right? I mean, relatively few people that are there, the outside of the people that are doing chip design. If it's a configuration center, it's a mixed bag. Yes, a lot of automation, a significant amount of automation, but still you'd be surprised how much of it still does involve people putting the final product and then the final kit together. But it is definitely a move I would consider them as configuration centers as I would as much manufacturing centers when you start getting into a lot of these products. But for sure, that has absolutely happened. I want to make one other point, though, going back to the concerns associated with tariffs. This is a super, super interesting point, and that is that when you survey, and I think you'll appreciate this, Ray, when you survey around the world about risk factors associated with your tech buying, what you find is that the impact of tariffs and geopolitical factors rises to the top of the list. Worldwide, about 29% of CIOs consider that a major risk. But what's fascinating is in North America, it's only about 27%. In Europe, it's 34%. And the reason is it's almost, and then in Asia, it's about 30%. And so it's almost as if in North America, we've kind of seen this movie before, and we kind of know that there's a lower percent of people who are super concerned about tariffs. Whereas in Europe and in Asia Pacific, they're a lot less experienced with this administration and sort of the maneuvering that happens around tariffs leading up to actually implementing them. And so I think that the US executives are frankly a little bit more conditioned to what's happening in tariffs than the other IT executives are around the world.
And it's a good point, right? I mean, and there are really three types of tariffs. Like the first set of tariffs were, hey, China, Mexico, US, Canada, get your act together. Stop sending precursors to fentanyl here. Tariffs number two are reciprocal tariffs, which we're going to see in April, which says, hey, if my car in Europe is being charged at 15% tariff and your car over here from Europe is only being charged a 3% tariff, let's agree on 0, 3, 15, or anything in between to actually implement free trade. The third one is the interesting one to me, which are protective tariffs, which are, and this didn't hit me until Davos. I got out of Davos and I was like, holy crap, this is a game about AI, energy, and humanoids. And I realized this. I suddenly had this discovery that I said, China doesn't care if the population dynamics go in reverse. That's less mouths to feed. That's less foment. That's less burden. In fact, they're going to replace everything with humanoids. And they have the humanoid supply chain better than anyone else. So if you're getting a $1,000 robot from China versus a $5,000 robot from the US, and you're on the battlefield, you're going to lose every time on the US side. Right. So this is an interesting thing. So we're seeing protective tariffs come out really against the humanoid supply chain.
Yeah, and you're going to see more and more of that kind of behavior. And then I will also say that when you get into places like China, you've got a very different legal landscape and a very different amount of data that they can get access to, amount of data that a humanoid can actually record. And so they're able to make different kinds of decisions with those humanoid robots because they're collecting a lot more data. So they could end up pretty far ahead here.
Yeah, this is going to really change that landscape and really change how we look at it. Now, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, AI. Where are people prioritizing the spend? And you and I know this is happening. Basically, every customer we talk to on the buy side has this challenge where their OpEx has completely been taken away by the hyperscalers and the SaaS vendors, leaving very, very little for investment now. So almost 93% of the OpEx has been consumed, which means you only have 7% for discretionary projects. It's almost like a federal budget, right? There's only very little for all the other cool stuff, but everything's been paid for, right, by the core stuff that you need. What's happening? Like, is something shifting? Because last year we robbed cybersecurity budgets to pay for AI.
Yeah, and so I think now there's a few things that are happening. I think one of them is that we're continuing with the core hyperscaler AI infrastructure budgets that are being fueled. And it's interesting that we're not seeing kind of this law of diminishing returns yet. We're still seeing you can throw a lot of capacity AI and you can get greater and greater performance. The challenge I see when I talk to CIOs is when they think about AI beyond what I'll call invisible in plain sight AI, which is Gemini, Copilot, Cloud, those kinds of products, as well as AI that's embedded in applications that they already have, they don't know where to start. And this is particularly a problem with agents because they look at agents and they say, I'm skeptical. I know it's going to require significant human oversight. It's going to hallucinate. So I can't just let this thing run, but I'm afraid not to run with it. I know I have to invest in it, but my budgets are under pressure. So I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of a lean back in the agent world over the course of the next couple of quarters. Make no mistake, when you get to agents, now you've finally got a technology that can unlock the value of your unstructured data in a very, very automated way. But I think that I'm seeing customers not kind of knowing how to engage, but are afraid not to engage. So I think we're going to see that push-pull play out over the sort of middle of this year until people can start getting decent prototypes and moving forward. And I think that might take some of the pressure off the budget stuff that you're talking about.
That's a great point. Now, not to name any vendors, we don't want to get anyone in trouble, but when I talk to my 21-year-old and I show him the stuff that these vendors are putting out, they're just laughing. They're like, this stuff is BS. That's literally what every one of his friends said. He's like, none of these folks have delivered agents. These are not agents. These are things we could have done in a 3-week project at school. What do you say when you think about that? Like, have we really got to agentic systems that work? And let's get to the point where it's like, an agent is an API with a decisioning engine, right? It's really like at the basic level. Have we gotten to a point where these things are actually working?
Not without a lot of oversight, right? And with a lot of oversight, yes, we're starting to see price negotiation. We're starting to see you be able to use an agent to get customer sentiment out of your client success software, for example. But it requires a lot of oversight. It requires, again, an initial read of resumes or an initial read of job applications in order to spit out the top 100 candidates for a job. We're starting to see that kind of stuff, but we have a lot of work to do before we can, set these things loose and feel like they're as in production. They're as easy to put into production as probably people think that maybe they are based on the media that you see associated with it. But I think the important point here is it's going to change quickly. And I think that I haven't found a company yet that's willing to lean back and say, yeah, I'm not going to invest. I don't think this thing is real. I actually do think we are on the cusp of something pretty amazing here.
I agree with you. We've gone from the internet age to the age of AI. And it really has happened. And the thing that connects these two ages together is mass digitization. That mass digitization is only going to fuel the ability to get us into the AI age. And I think that's a significant piece. You've got a lot of fans, Crawford. I've got tons of text here, people asking me. And it really, we got hundreds of viewers on at the moment, but they've got a ton of fans asking me the same question. And I'm not going to ask the other question, which I know we're not going to talk about. But the main question here is, are you optimistic about where we are with spending for next year? That's what it summarizes. People want to know, at the end of the day, do you think it's going to continue to go up, or are we going to be at a standstill? What's your answer to that? And I'll give you a couple of attributes too. Deflationary forces from the effect of AI making us more productive. Deflationary forces from the fact that we've got tariffs and a potential economic slowdown coming. Are you still bullish on AI spending? And let's do it adjusted for inflation to give you some leeway here.
Yeah, sure. So, the short answer is, and we are living this every single day, we are starting to see GDP expectations from our internal economists as well as outside economists we have relationships with come down. We are clearly seeing that come down. And the first places where we're seeing it are in B2C markets. So that's going to be advertising spending. That's going to be consumer devices, consumer PCs. People will put off their phone spending, and we are definitely seeing that come down. And that is why, the high end of our range, 9% growth for this year, is looking less and less likely. Now, in our current forecast, do we expect the U.S. to go in? Do we expect overall GDP worldwide to be negative this year? And do we expect there to be a recession? No. We expect GDP to be in about the 2% range, somewhere range bound between 2 and 2.3%, I think is a decent place to be. Where do we think IT will come in? I think you're going to continue to see hyperscalers. We can talk about GTC in a second, but hyperscalers continue to invest going forward. And so I think that drives a ton of spending. Additionally, and this sounds kind of mundane, but commercial PCs have got to get upgraded. Interestingly, about 20% of companies that responded to our commercial PC survey said, you know what, I'm not going to pay the Microsoft tax. I'm just going to let it ride, which is kind of crazy from a security standpoint.
They're tired of the Microsoft tax.
Yeah, but the reality is we are going to see double-digit growth for commercial PCs, at least in the first half of this year, and PCs move the needle. I'm confident in our enterprise spending forecast, and all that gets me to, I'm going to go with somewhere between 3 and 6% IT growth this year. So am I as bullish as I was at the beginning of the year? No. Do I think we're headed to a really, really tough year? No. I actually think that for all this tariff talk, we're actually going to get to an okay place by mid-year in terms of tariff positioning with the U.S. and other countries. And then I do think the U.S. will likely see a benefit from tax relief by the fourth quarter of this year, by the end of the year. So that's my quick take. I'm not as bullish as I was. I don't see the deflationary forces of AI and negatively impacting IT more than what I talked about.
You know, I like your base case. It makes a lot of sense. I understand how you built it up. I'm thinking long term, we got some interesting forces. It's one of the concepts we're talking about, which is exponential efficiency. If you're not 10 times better or 1/10 the cost in the next few years, you're not going to survive. If you're not 10 times better and 1/10 the cost in the next 5 years, you're not going to be here. And if you're not 10 times better, 1/10 the cost and 1/10 the time, you won't be around in the age of AI. And the reason we're talking about this is that deflationary force on productivity and on costs, I think it's going to hit us. And so I don't know if it matters if GDP goes down. It's a question of did productivity go up?
Yeah, well, yeah, productivity absolutely has to go up, and productivity is going to go up. And I think that what that gets you to is are we going to see job elimination, or and at what degree are we going to see job elimination?
And what the replacement will look like for the job growth.
And what, yeah, exactly. And then how fast can we invent new jobs there? And I think we're going to invent more new jobs than we kind of think we're going to invent. I also would say that there's a fascinating paper that was published at the University of Hawaii in January of this year. And what it got into was the impact of AI on temporary employment. And what it found was that if you have a very narrowly defined job, as soon as AI hit that job, like for example, translation, demand for those humans collapsed and prices for those jobs collapsed. However, you get to a more complex job like web development, demand went up and prices went up. Now, why is that? It's because web development is hundreds of tasks all brought together, where the web developer can become much more efficient and, to your point, get that 10 times efficiency and be able to charge more, whereas the translator got crushed. And oh, by the way, once AI catches a task, it never reverts. The human can't do it ever as fast or as efficiently as AI. So I think we're going to see that dynamic where in the more complicated multitask worlds, people get more efficient and they get that benefit going forward.
Now, Crawford, if you can humor me for a little bit, we're going to bring on our next guest. I'm going to introduce him, and then we're going to sit on the couch like the old Letterman days and Johnny Carson and move him over. So we're going to bring on Gurvinder if he shows up. I'll put him back up here. We're going to introduce Gurvinder. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Persistent. He's got 20 years experience, including being the Chief of Staff in the Chairman's Office of companies like Wipro and the Chief Growth Officer and CMO. He's also a expert in black belt leadership. He's got a green belt in Six Sigma, if you can even think about that. It's a lot of work. But Gurvinder is not only one of the best thought leaders in this business, but also someone I consider a friend. And of course, he's now he's been at the CMO at Persistent for quite some time. And of course, we're going to have him here. So Gurvinder, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ray. And it's a tough act to follow, Crawford. So I'll try my best. Thanks for having me again.
No problem. I want to jump in with both of you here to get some reflections on the biggest AI show in the world. And that just happened a few days ago, actually still happening today from what I hear. It's been a 5-day fest in San Jose. That's the NVIDIA GTC show. Gurvinder, what are some of your first thoughts? I'll go to you, Crawford, and then of course, we'll let you leave. I know you got some pressing appointments, Crawford. We'll go from there. So, Gurvinder, what were some of your first thoughts?
See, I think, first of all, I'm very positive in terms of the impact that AI will have. In fact, I was telling you that we actually launched something called as a campaign on AI imagining the world. What I frequently see is that whenever anybody is talking about AI, they will naturally speak about reimagining. And we thought, why not put AI in the middle of it? So I think all of this is rooted towards AI imagining. My firm belief and the belief at Persistent is that AI must be intentional, transformative, and responsible. And the messages that I heard coming from GTC were in that direction. So it's about how we can unlock strategic advantage. We speak about this quite often. How are we empowering the enterprise with intelligence? And like I said, reimagining with AI on how business can innovate at scale. So I think that those are the key messages that I got.
And this massively impacts your business because you guys do a lot of work helping people build products, build technologies, get them into the market. What were your thoughts, Crawford, in terms of where GTC was headed, and more importantly, the future of the AI industry?
Yeah, so what I found fascinating, and I've seen this progression with every GTC, is how what a masterful job Jensen really does in terms of being able to put NVIDIA at the center of this ecosystem and really differentiate NVIDIA in that ecosystem where we are the sun of this solar system. And that's everything from all the traditional partners you would expect all the way out to AI factories. We no longer build data centers, Ray. We build AI factories, where that AI factory, the center, the engine of that factory is going to be an NVIDIA.
With NVIDIA inside, of course, right? Like they had every moat. Here's the chip, but by the way, here's our moat. Here's the connectors. Oh, by the way, here's our moat. Here's the CUDA software. By the way, here's our moat. Here's the ecosystem. By the way, here's our moat. I mean, it is the most crazy. Like Jensen pretty much woke up and said, Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, you made a mistake during the internet age. I'm taking it all.
Yeah, exactly. You made it tremendous. And I've said this often, right? I mean, people don't compare NVIDIA to Intel back in the day. Compare them to Wintel. Compare them to the entire ecosystem that Microsoft and Intel put together. It's crazy. And they have this massive moat. They are at the center of that ecosystem. And it's just, I'm sensing an increasing uncomfortableness with this lock-in and this dependence. And there is no better solution.
6 Mag 7 paying for the 7. I mean, it's crazy, I mean, it is impossible to believe what that was happening.
Yeah,
well, Crawford, thanks.
And the three of us, we go back to the days when, you used to sit down with Jensen at the old facility where, they were trying GPUs, they were trying phones, they were trying...
Check out autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. Autonomous vehicles that, and then, all of a sudden, their vision came to it. Credit to them. They designed for it. They went for it. They got it. But I'm really, my hat's off. I mean, to talk for 2 hours like that, as near as I can tell, with no notes, just
no notes,
creating this incredibly powerful ecosystem that, again, they are absolutely not hosting. They are the sun. They're the sun in that solar system.
They were durable. They've showed durability in what they can deliver. Crawford, hey, thanks for being here. We've got Crawford here, Crawford Del Prete, president of IDC. Follow him on X @Craw, and of course, sharing his insights. Thanks for being on the show. We'll send you off, and thanks a lot, man.
All have a great day.
All right. So, cool. Gurvinder, we just had an amazing conversation here with Crawford, talking about where that world's heading. And of course, we can't talk to you without talking about the concept around growth. And growth is really where customers are looking for opportunities. We all know we can cut our way to the bone and get to certain numbers, but if you don't have growth, you don't get to succeed. Talk about growth rooted in heritage, curiosity. I mean, it embodies a lot of what Persistent does for its customers, and really how you kind of bring all that together in not only your marketing efforts, but in how your clients live their lives.
No, I think it's a fascinating time, and what an amazing time to lead marketing for an icon like Persistent. Yeah, we are rooted. Yeah, our heritage comes from product engineering, which is what Anand, our Deshpande, our founder, wanted to start a product engineering focused company. And when I look back at where we stand today, we've had 19 straight consecutive quarters of growth with a 19.9% YOY revenue increase. And I think, to your point, it's all about growth, but I think it's also about sustainable growth. It's about focusing on aspects that are actually making a difference. As I was expecting Vala to be on the show, so I prepped a lot from what we do from a Salesforce perspective, because the kind of fascinating work that we are doing with Salesforce when it comes to Agentforce. When someone is making a payment using one of the big payment players, they're working with Salesforce and Persistent. When you are financing your vehicle, we are working with Salesforce from that perspective. And I think we've recently trained about 1,000+ people on the Agentforce. And then I think the other big part for us is the focus on our own IP. That's one. And two, also working with the hyperscalers and the ecosystem and building products and services with them as well. So I think it's a combination of these factors, Ray, that really put Persistent at the forefront in terms of what we are doing today in terms of growth.
One of the things we discovered, especially with agents, is that the software vendors have done a poor job building their agents, but the system integrators and services companies have done an amazing job building agents. And part of it is the fact that when you have to cut across departments, cut across functional fiefdoms, and work across business processes, you have to be really good at integration. And as we said earlier, an agent is really an API tied to decision engine, and being able to see what a business needs to do across the board really makes it work. Right. And so this level of strategic AI integration, that's going to be important. And AI's role in terms of being efficient and helping with collaboration and AI integration is something I know you've been championing as well with you and your customers. Let's talk a little bit about how AI-led marketing is kind of, I don't know, you have a cute quote for it, for reimagining the world. So share a little bit about that and what's going on there.
So before I go there, I think I would definitely echo the sentiment. That's why if you see we launched SASVA, which is the other form of SASVA is actually Service as Software Virtual Agent. It's a word that comes from the Sanskrit word Shashwat, which stands for timeless relevance. That's what we named our platform after. Coming to, I think CMOs or marketing is one of the first few roles which is getting disrupted. I would say in a positive way. The amount of efficiency that we can gain, the amount of I and my team, we play with the new set of tools. We actually having startups come and present to us, in a sort of a Shark Tank way, where we get them to come and present. Because if we are not using AI, when I love that quote, and I think multiple people have spoken about it in multiple ways, that it's not AI that will take your role or your job away. It is someone who's using AI to do that role that will. So I think the amount of efficiency that we can gain, and I think we were one of the first ones to actually create our own internal content model. We call it as Content Assist. Not very. Maybe we can get more creative with that name, but that's what it does. It was helping my content team to have access to a tool which had its pipe, one into ChatGPT, second into our own content, and third into open internet, and how we could start producing content. The toughest thing is to write the first draft, and which is where this tool turned out to be very helpful. And the second thing where we're using it a lot is, of course, from producing videos at scale. This is really making our jobs much more efficient and effective, I would say.
Crazy, right? I mean, we were just at the Adobe Summit, and you could see that someone that might have taken 6 weeks to do a global marketing campaign was able to get it to 6 days. right? I mean, from video to translation to, having culturally appropriate types of backgrounds. I mean, the prompts are getting crazy. You've got Firefly showing up in video form. I mean, all these things are happening as we speak, changing the way we look at marketing. You're right. You got to get started. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. But what about with your clients? How are people handling the AI skepticism that's out there, right? Are they able to get behind it? Are they excited? Are they cautious? What's happening here?
I think what started, and I think we spoke about this also when we were doing the show at the end of the year, where we were rating the best books in the industry. And I felt that, of course, just like, the hype cycle from that perspective, we are going through that stage where there is a bit of caution. But I would say that this is where an opportunity lies for companies like Persistent, because customers can trust us, given our own ability with our own IP to the focus and relationship that we have with the hyperscalers, the ecosystem. I would say this is actually an opportunity for players like Persistent to stand out and work very closely with our customers to help them really gain the advantage that they can secure. To your point, this is game changing. Talk about some healthcare players that we are working with. Talk about micro loans, for example. You're talking about reducing the amount of time it takes to get a loan from 10 days to a few hours. You're talking about cancer detection, which could take days again to a few minutes, and that too, being able to get drugs to the market a lot faster. So this is for real. I think this is the time when players who know the difference are being segregated from the ones who are maybe just talking.
Right. I mean, you have to figure out like how the impact is at the business model level and really where this is heading. And a lot of folks don't understand that. I mean, these are business model shifts that will occur, just like the internet changed the way our business models are, just like the internet changed the way we interact. I mean, just even how we look at things, like we're asking questions now, prompting, right, when we're looking for stuff. I mean, people are talking in prompts. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I was sitting around with a bunch of developers at C3 Transform earlier this week, and literally, like the conversations are really about, I mean, how you get the most out of your AI systems, which isn't easy to do this. So, do you think it's hype or transformative? Are we past hype at the moment?
I think we are past hype. And if you think you're not past hype, it could also be because you yourself are not using it for your own role. I think it passed the hype. The amount of efficiency that I'm seeing personally as a CMO, plus what we are experiencing and seeing with our customers, this is definitely a trend to follow and invest in.
No, that's a great point there. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in terms of your leadership and learnings. A lot of people see you on LinkedIn. You're very popular as a thought leader. People look up to you in many different ways. So let's talk about leadership learnings and some of your career reflections. You spent 2 decades at Wipro, and you moved to Persistent. You went from really big, established IT services firm to upstart. And in the process, your company has managed to go to get to $1 billion in revenue, and you might even get to $2 billion soon. So talk a little bit about what changes in terms of how you learn and how you lead.
I think it's amazing. I mean, the good thing for me is I saw Wipro also grow from a sub-billion-dollar company to close to 10 billion plus. And then when I joined Persistent, the good thing for me was I had a bigger opportunity, because when I was at Wipro, I was starting out my career, and here I had the opportunity to really help how we work with the leadership, being a part of the leadership team. Number one is that your team, invest in your team. Ensure that you are bringing the right talent on board. Ensure that the people keep upskilling themselves. AI has given such an amazing opportunity. I was the first one to go, and thanks to our CEO and his vision in terms of implementing all the tools that we need from an AI perspective. So focus on your team, skill them with the right set of tools. Be brave in terms of going out there and really, like when we launched the campaign, We went all out. I never thought I'll go and put billboards. And guess what? If you are on SFO 101, go check our Re-AI Imagining the World billboard. If you're in the city of Pune, where the company was born, it proudly says born in Pune and Re-AI Imagining the World. So be brave from that perspective. And I think the third part is that, it's fascinating to see how, and I think we were talking a few minutes back when Crawford was on, it's all about the ecosystem, Ray. No single company, no single individual can go and grow. Growth, as we call it, is linked to how you work with the ecosystem. So I think that perspective also is something that I'm focusing on.
You've done a really good job with ecosystems, and that's one of the things that I was admiring, right? Because direct sales is only part of it, but when you bring partners together, magic happens, right? They might know an industry better, they might know have a contact at a different role, they're coming at it from a different business problem, and that does change how people look at this. So what was the same about going from $1 billion to 10 billion that you've experienced at Persistent, and what's different?
So I think what's different now is that the opportunity is very different in a way, right? I mean, if you look at the when I see the impact that we are able to create, like if I look at the past, there was a lot of talk about don't go too technical or don't talk too much technology. But guess what? Now it's the geeky ones. It's the people who can talk technology. Are the ones that customers will trust, because it's a board talk now. It's no longer a CIO or a CTO that is talking about this. Given what's going on in the industry, the CIO and CTO is right there and is helping the CEO answer to the board in terms of what they are doing. So I think the opportunity is at a very different level. The whole point of it's no longer about the number of people that you're throwing at a problem. That is a big difference, which is where I feel that, and when I look at the growth, and when I look at the number of people coming in, those numbers are no longer in the same ratio as they were in the past.
You're absolutely right. I was with one of our joint mutual friends. He just left the company, and he just created a company that's close to almost $750,000 per revenue per employee. I mean, it is imaginable in this year that you could get to $1 million per employee, and you could probably get to 3 or 5 million employee in a couple years. I mean, we could see the first $1 billion services company with 100 employees at 10 million per. I mean, that's, or 1,000. I mean, just think about how crazy that's going to be. That is an amazing number in terms of scale we're going to see with AI, in terms of the shift that's about to happen.
I know, and I know who we are talking about, and I can tell you that it's fascinating on how people can start a company now, and how they can scale. They no longer need the amount of resources that they required in the past. It's scary, but at the same time, fascinating to see how it's evolving.
I think we're going to see a lot more startups purely just based on the fact that the existing cost to run a legacy company is so much higher than it is to start something from scratch. It is so expensive maintaining all those layers to get out there that people are going to just start from scratch in order to create those new types of opportunities at a much lower cost point, which is hard to do. So, okay, I got to tap. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying that it's fascinating. In fact, I not checked that point, but I think I saw the head of Microsoft India. He had put something on LinkedIn this morning that India has the second highest after US number of tech startups which are being started by women leaders. So I haven't checked the fact, but it was fascinating to see the role that governments need to play from that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's a big role. Okay, I would be remiss in terms of not asking you about the future of AI in marketing as a marketeer. Any advice? What excites you the most here in this space?
Number one is you better be using it. So ensure that you are using it. You're getting your team equipped to use AI. Number two is I think the best people. A lot of us have a lot of unlearning to do. So I find it's the interns, it's the young ones. In fact, I learn a lot about video creation using AI tools from my own daughters who are 12 and 16. So ensure that you are having those interns work on the tools. The other thing is, I know, and I think I heard Vala say this on one of the shows, that AI tool is like an intern itself, but that intern needs coaching. Don't just leave it on the intern to do everything. You still have to do check the work that they're putting in, ensure that you're putting the guardrails. But I think it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, and like with good interns, they get better with time. So, we definitely see opportunities that are happening there. What about industry peers? What do people need to do differently in this business with AI rolling along? Any kind of advice?
I think I'm a big fan of John Reed, and I think he comes and speaks about events, right? So I'm yet to see. The jury is out there in terms of the impact of events specifically from a growth perspective for providers. Yet to see how, and I'm experimenting with a few things. Hopefully, I'll have a few examples to share when I'm on the show the next time. But I think that is one thing that I'm waiting to see on how, if you recall, and I think it's a combination of something that we were able to do when metaverse was a big topic. Remember, there was something called as the metaverse, where how do you connect the dots from a physical and a virtual perspective? So I'm waiting for that to happen.
Hey, the UX for AI is coming, so we'll have to wait and see who actually builds this. I think I know an answer. You and I both know an answer of who might be delivering on that. So, well, that's very cool. We are here with Gurvinder, and of course, Gurvinder, I really want to thank you for being on the show. Old friend Gurvinder Sahni, Chief Marketing Officer at Persistent Systems. Follow him at GS Sahni, and more importantly, catch a lot of his inspirational LinkedIn posts, tweets. He's up there with Vala if you're looking for things that are deep in meaning, and of course, great for the industry. Thanks. We'll see you in the green room.
Thank you, and read these books as well. Thanks for
Thanks a lot. Take care, Gurvinder. All right. Well, hey, thanks for being on this episode. And of course, our next episode coming up in the next few weeks. And this is, of course, episode number 393. We are charging fast to episode 400. We have Jason Averbrook, global lead on HR transformation and AI at Mercer, but you might know him as one of the top HR leaders in the business. We got Cynthia Kane, the author of The Pause Principle, How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. We're going to need a lot more of that. And Faisal Haq, award-winning entrepreneur and globally recognized management thinker and a #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and of course the author of Transcend: Unlocking Humanity in the Age of AI. You'll catch this next week, and of course you can catch us live at all the events Constellation analysts will be at, and of course save a few dates. Constellation Connected Enterprise, October 20th to 23rd, Half Moon Bay at the Ritz, and of course we got some other special events that are coming up. And if you're watching TV, catch me on Barney. I will be there I think at the 11 a.m. hour on Monday. So if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Catch Vala Afshar and myself next week for episode number 393, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks a lot.